Spokane Valley could become a sanctuary city of a different
Councilman
kind.
Caleb Collier says that this
I'm proposing that the city of Spokane Valley issue a proclamation stating that our city is a Second Amendment sanctuary city.
Welcome to the fire.
Today on Church and State, what is America's future with Eric Kohn? Hello, Christian Patriots, and welcome to Church and State, where we drive morality and religion over tolerance and apathy. And I'm your host, Caleb Collier, once again, your favorite far-right shock jock, and the show that talks about politics and religion. Jesus Christ is our referee, so it's always nice and clean. Real quick, point you to the website, churchandstate.media. Fill out this form for us, get our newsletter, bypass censorship, and of course, I personally call every single one of you who fills this out. Also, check out our most recent episodes, continuing to bring some incredible people on the show right there. The Health Ranger, Mike Adams, that was a fun episode that I'd love for you to share with friends, family, and neighbors. And of course, check out the featured guest page. We've had some incredible people within the decade that I've been doing this. Had some amazing people join us. If you click on the name, it'll bring you right to the episode. Also, do some shopping with the great affiliates that we have. These are companies that I personally shop with, I support, and they support me. And with every single one of those, if you use that promo code Church and State, many of them you'll get a discount, but all of them you'll be helping to support us. Speaking of support, hit the donate button for us, will you? Look, we're already a part of some incredible networks, NRBTV, Prepper Broadcasting Network, Newscasters, Your News, Faith and Freedom Television, a lot of different networks. We are starting national syndication this month, and all of that requires a lot of money. So anything you can throw our way, $5, $10 a month, whatever it is, we appreciate it. Lastly, if you want to get a hold of us, Church and State 1776 at proton.me. With that, let's go ahead and bring on our guest. Now, I'm thrilled to bring to you Eric Kohn. He's the Chief Executive Officer at America's Future. This is a talent accelerator and social club for liberty-minded young professionals. My gosh, do we need more of that? Prior to joining AF, Eric was Chief Marketing Officer at Empower Illinois. He's also previously served as Director of Marketing and Communications at the Action Institute and Director of Communications Management at the Illinois Policy Institute. This man has done a lot. Eric, it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it. Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, because I see such a need for this, to get the youth in particular engaged in the fight for liberty.
Yeah. Well, America's Future was founded in 1995 by a lot of young people in Washington, D.C., who were in the think tank research space there. And what they were really angling for was, okay, so how do we get our bosses jobs at some point in time in the near future? And they realized that they weren't getting invited to do things like speak on panel discussions. They weren't getting invited to do things like participate in debates. So the question was, like, how do we get this experience? How do we accumulate and build these skill sets that are going to be necessary for us to advance our careers? So they did something that I love, which is they created their own institution, and they member sourced the people who are going to participate in those debates and discussions. And today, fast forward 31 years later, America's Future, we are a talent accelerator and professional network for classically liberal young people. So we work with young people between the ages of 22 all up to the age of 40 who are in that early to mid stage of their career. And what we help them do is a couple of things. First, we help them to build their skill sets. So we run fellowship programs throughout the year that will allow them to build their skill sets in a number of different tactical skill areas. So we have a writing fellows program that will help people make much more compelling argument in 750 to 850 words. We have a lead fellows program that helps people develop the leadership skills that they will need. It's really for people who are moving into managing people for the first time, or just getting ready to move into a position where they're going to manage people. And then we have a Create Fellows program that is in the marketing space. As you noted in the intro, I've got a marketing background, so we're working to expand the skill sets of people who work in marketing. And then this fall, we're launching our first fundraising-oriented fellowship. So we work through these programs to build those skill sets, and then as well to build a sense of network and community amongst these young people with a shared set of beliefs that will be important for them in the furtherance and maintenance of their careers down the road.
I got to tell you, I love everything you said except for one thing. 1995 was 31 years ago. I reject that entirely. No, it doesn't seem that long ago.
I agree with you. Yeah, it's still like people say the 1980s, and it's like, yeah, that was like 20 years ago, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still a young man. I will fight you on that. No, this is phenomenal stuff. I love that it was so organic in its inception, that they saw a need and they didn't scratch their heads and say, somebody ought to, or even worse than that, the government ought to. No, they decided to take action themselves and, really leading these young people in expressing these principles of liberty. You mentioned classical liberalism. I absolutely love that. We need more of that. And if anybody's watching the show going, what are you breed Democrats? Wrong liberals, guys. Do a little bit more homework there. So tell me a few success stories. So some individuals that maybe that you've been tracking since the beginning, and they've moved on and really been some like a vocal point for this idea set.
Some of the people who were involved with America's Future very early on there are names that some of your listeners might recognize. We used to publish a magazine back in the day called Doublethink, and among the first editors of that magazine were people like Catherine Mengue Ward and Peter Suderman, who are now at Reason Magazine. Tim Carney was a contributor to that. Sonny Bunch, who used to be the Washington Examiner, I think he's now at the Bulwark, had a blog with us at one point in time. So there's definitely some names that you would recognize, but there are also just thousands of people who work at national organizations, international organizations, state-based think tanks, who are working on these ideas of how do we expand human liberty, how do we unleash the potential of the human person. I've had experience at really all three of those levels. America's Future is one of those organizations that serves people nationally. I worked at the Acton Institute prior to that, which is an internationally focused think tank that works on the intersection of faith and freedom, of good intentions and sound economics. And then a little further back in my career, I was at the Illinois Policy Institute, which is one in a network of really great state-based think tanks that work out there that are hyper-focused on the issues facing individual states. So as someone in Illinois, that was a whole lot of budget tax related issues. Illinois has, I imagine by this time, it's got to be over a $300 billion unfunded pension liability. Illinois is one of the highest property tax states in the nation. And then we would work on solutions to, actually, I take that back. I don't like using the word solutions because I don't think any of these things are ever permanently solved. We would work on means to address those problems and to alleviate those problems to make Illinois a more affordable and wonderful place to live. So we've got people who have been through our network, been through our training programs, who are marketers, influencers, thinkers, writers, personalities, people who are working on these issues, and how can we expand a concept of liberty and really have that lead to the kind of human flourishing that I think we all want to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that. Let me ask you a question about the youth because, there tends to be this mentality, I'm a Gen Xer and, I tend to shake my fist right at the next generations and get off my lawn type of mentality. But what I'm seeing within the youth is there is, of course, that problematic attraction to democratic socialism. I don't know why we throw the Democrat in that. It's just socialism. But there is a trend towards that. But then also I do see the younger generation interested in this liberty movement and libertarianism and the different thought processes, the anarchists, the minarchists, the classically liberal. So where do you see the youth going? Are they going to go one of two directions or anything in between?
Yeah, I think it's, predictions are difficult, particularly ones about the future. So where are they going to go is hard. And I think that I can't remember which British prime minister it was whose response to a question was events, dear boy, events. That's what's going to end up shaping the future. And there will be things that are in many ways beyond any of our control that are going to have a major impact on that. I will tell you what I am seeing and what is leading people in either the direction that we're more in favor of these concepts of human liberty, and what are leading people in another direction, I think it really is the same motivating thing. And I think it is a search for meaning. It is a search for a sense of belonging. And I have been saying for a number of years, dating back to the time that I spent at the Acton Institute, that we are homo religioso as a species, right? We have this calling to seek the transcendent. We have this internal calling to find something that is bigger than ourselves that we want to be a part of. As the author David Foster Wallace said, everyone worships. The question is just what? And we have, I think we're seeing in the young people who are inclined towards, it was first the Bernie Sanders boomlet, which has now blossomed into this Democrat socialist movement that we are seeing mostly in major cities, but also at some different levels too. And we'll have to wait and see what the success level of some of those individuals and candidates are. I think what you're seeing there is people who are searching for a sense of meaning, young people who are searching for a sense of meaning and belonging to something larger than themselves. As we would say when I was at Acton, if people aren't going to get their religious fulfillment from religion, it's not that they're not going to stop seeking it. It's just that they are going to seek it in other places. And I've had these conversations before with my friend David Bonson about the lack of and need for a sense of eschatology amongst people, a theory of what the end times actually looks like. Because when you do not believe that there is anything beyond this existence, it gives you a permission structure to do all kinds of awful things within the parameters of this existence. Because, well, what excuse do you have for not trying to make this existence the most perfect it possibly can be? And I think that we should also keep in mind that we, especially through the filtering of the internet, we hear a lot of the loudest and most activist voices. And I think we see this in the work that we are doing, that there are a lot of people who are in that same age demographic who are not particularly inclined towards either of these, but do have a sensibility about the same desires, that they are looking for that sense of meaning. So I think it is yet to be seen which is the direction that more things are going to take. But I guess I would conclude that answer with this, that there was a really great essay in a publication called National Affairs by a social scientist named, or political scientist named Daniel Burns. And the title of the piece was Liberal Theory versus Liberal Practice. And again, we're talking about small L classical liberalism here, not the counterpoint to conservatism as described in most of the 20th century. And his point, I think, is a very good one, which there are these voices now, and I think you increasingly seeing them on some sectors of the right, that think that if we could just erase John Locke from everybody's memory, that America would stop being a liberal society. And Burns's point in there is so much of that is just baked into the cake of who we are as Americans, that we are a small liberal society in our actions, even irrespective of liberal theory. So one of the reasons I remain hopeful, I don't like to say optimistic. My friend, Father Robert Sirico, the co-founder of the Acton Institute, always made this point that optimism is really, in that sense, no different from pessimism, in that you're just hoping things get better or expecting that they get worse. I think hope is different in that someone with hope is doing things to pursue those ends. But I am hopeful about the future and about the future of young people because of the power of liberal institutions in this country, of the liberal DNA of Americans, that I think is going to continue to be a major driving factor in where those people go. So I'm alarmed by the Democratic Socialist rise. I think that it's going to create a lot of problems, but also I do think we have the advantage of, I think our arguments are right. I think what we believe is right, and I think it will be venerated as such over time. And perhaps we just need these reminders every generation or so. As Edmund Burke said, example is the school of mankind, and he shall learn it no other. We need these examples of like, oh, we're going to try this again. Oh, it failed the same way that it did previously. And, we learn then through those examples.
Sure. I've got a smaller follow-up on that, and then I want to dive into what you were talking about, eschatology, because I find that fascinating. But One of the things that always kind of vexed me, I suppose, was there was a portion of the younger population that were all on board for the Ron Paul revolution. And then after that didn't work out, unfortunately, many of them flipped over to Bernie Sanders, which these two are fundamentally opposed to each other and how government should operate. Is that just more of that wanting that sense of belonging?
I think that's some of it. I've always found it kind of interesting that the two politicians that most embodied this kind of young person populist movement were both, I think septuagenarians or octogenarians when they were doing it. Look, I think we've definitely got a problem in this country with gerontocracy, and I think we need to start looking to some younger people more pointedly. But, I think that those were two different people who were offering two different explanations for the problems that were plaguing the country at the time. Although I think that there is sometimes you can find some overlap, and I think at least the sentiment about that there are some forces out of your control that are really affecting your life. And I'm not the hugest fan of that argument, not because there aren't power sources within the country, but because I do think a lot of it is more within people's control, or at least things within the parameters of your individual life and how you wish to live are a lot more in your control than a lot of those people want to give you in terms of an answer. So I think it is a pretty interesting sociological phenomenon that we had. But I think so much of this really, and I think you can peg it more towards Ron Paul's second run for the presidency more so than his first. But I think a lot of this has been us dealing with the very long tail of the financial crisis of 2008, which typically does lead to waves of populist movements. And there is some importance in a limited sense, I think, to that populism as a corrective, but it cannot be governing in and of itself, I don't think, just because of the nature of populism being, I want what I want now, irrespective of what the law actually is. And I think one of the things that has made us a great country has been being a rule of law society. And I think either of those kinds of populism can be eroding of that. So I think it was kind of a split phenomenon, but a lot of it very much descended from what happened in the financial crisis.
Sure, that makes sense to me. All right, let's dive into what you were talking about with eschatology. Obviously, with a name like Church and State, we are a religious show. This is I think so important to this discussion is that there are so many of these people, varying degrees of nihilism. They just believe that they exist and then they cease to exist. And so there's no point in trying to make this world better. They can live however they want because it's all kind of pointless. Regardless of the religion that you practice, I'll throw that out there. Anyone who's believing in a higher power believes that there's life after this time on Earth is going to have a different perspective. Sometimes that can lead to really positive things. Sometimes it can lead to really negative things. But I think eschatology is important, and I would hope that more people would be on this journey towards finding that truth. Ultimately, I believe that truth is Jesus Christ. But what would you say as far as this world is going? Is there more people that are being attracted to the faith, or is there more people that are seeing everything as absurd and pointless?
I think it's complicated. I think there is some evidence of young people who are seeking out, especially more traditional forms of religion. I think you've seen some bumps certainly in like the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. I think there are people who are seeking that out. I mean, to come back to the fundamental point, right? The David Foster Wallace quote of "everybody worships." I think we are inclined towards this kind of way of thinking no matter what. So I think that seeking in us doesn't cease. It's just a question of what it is that we end up believing we're going to discover as a result of that. So I would just have to say from the sociological numbers that I don't see evidence of that we're on the precipice of any kind of a major religious revival or anything like that right now. What I do find interesting as anecdotal evidence, though, is there was this, again, going back to like the late 2000s and the early 2010s, there was this very virulent new atheist movement characterized by people like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, people who I think are interesting on some level, but were virulently anti-religious. And I think there is an important distinction that one needed to make in that, which is that I don't think they were actually atheists at all. They were anti-theists, and there's a difference between the two of them. The atheist doesn't believe that God exists. The anti-theist doesn't believe that God exists, and you too must also believe that, or should also believe that. Anti-theism is an evangelical anti-faith. It wants to persuade other people of their lack of belief in a way that I think atheism, qua atheism, is a little less concerned with, do other people believe the same as I do? I think it is interesting that that movement petered out so ignominiously as it did. You don't really hear about those new atheists anymore. Now, Hitchens has passed on, Dawkins is much, much older, but any of the other people involved in that movement, it does not have the weight and force that it once did. So I think that, again, we still live in one of the most religious countries in the entire world. Church-going percentages in this country are much higher than even, I've been in the trenches of the battles over things like what was going on in Hungary over the last decade. And even as I'm being told that this great thing that's, being governed in a much more Christian manner, they still had church-going rates that were far below what they were in the United States of America. So I think there is, again, some reason for some hope in all of that amongst young people. It's just really going to be a question of, people are going to seek these things beyond themselves, to be part of something that is bigger than themselves. And are they going to find the people representing those arguments for faith, for Christianity, to be compelling and something that they wish to associate themselves with? I think a huge part of what we're seeing too is institutional disaffiliation from people. People are choosing not to be part of institutions, not just church, but plenty of other institutions as well. And then some anti-institutionalist fervor, I think, has certainly informed our politics and our American life over the last decade or so. I think that's unsustainable long term. I think people need to be parts of those small bands of civil society where we come together to accomplish things that would be a lot harder if we were doing them individually. So it's a question of, are they going to find those institutions asking them to come be a part of them compelling? And I think that's yet to be seen.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. 'Cause you brought up that there was a bump in Catholicism, Orthodoxy. I've seen this as well. Even within some of the more mainline Protestant denominations, you're seeing some attraction there. I myself converted to Lutheranism from more of a non-denominational Pentecostal church. But then you also just said that people they've kind of had it up to here with the institutions. So if there's this movement against institutions, why do you see that there's a bump in the more institutionalized Christian denominations?
If I were to hazard a guess, and I'm certainly no scholar on this, I think that look, I'm a Catholic. I think one of the things that I like about the Catholic Church is, in the same way that you can't have a new old friend, you can't have a new old institution. And I think that there is something special and important about an institution that has survived thousands of years and has figured out how to navigate that and is offering people, in some senses, a less flexible version of something to be a part of. And I think you get this in some mainline Protestant churches as well. I think you get this in particularly the Missouri Synod of the Lutheran Church, as opposed to, say, and to take this entirely, so I don't want to offend any evangelicals in the audience who are listening, but purely from a psephological point of view, right? From an elections ballot counting political analysis point of view. I talked to someone a few years ago who told me that evangelical has ceased to be a useful term for political analysis. And one of the primary reasons for that is I don't know. Have you seen the movie The Untouchables? You know, Kevin Costner, Sean Connery.
Great movie.
So there's the scene on the bridge where Connery meets Costner's Elliot Ness for the first time. Ness has a gun, and eventually Connery lets him go after he tells him he's a Treasury officer. And it was like, I just told you that. And it was like, who would claim to be that? Who is not? And there's within the confines of, say, the Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, the Lutheran Church, there is that characteristic of there aren't a lot of people who claim to be that who are not. Now, they may be less practicing, they may be more of the cafeteria Catholic variety of it, but nonetheless, you're still either a part of the church or you are not. And the point that this psephologist I was talking to was making about evangelicalism is, in that term, you have people who attend church weekly, who go to a Bible study, who are incredibly active, and you have people who never attend at all, aren't even Christmas or Easter. So I think one of the reasons you're seeing some of those more traditional institutions get that bump, and I think perhaps the beginning of a return mentality to not only religious institutions, but I'm also hoping a lot of the important institutions of civil society, is because those more firmer, harder confines are something that people are looking for, right? I mean, in many ways, to me, they bring out the best in us. I have a friend from college who's a composer, and he would tell me that the worst commissions that he ever got to write music were when people would say, do whatever you want. Unlimited options in many ways is why I do not wish to forcibly remove options from people, of course. Constraining yourself in some way unleashes a greater sense of creativity, because when you've got some parameters, you figure out how to be creative within the box of those parameters. Being creative in an unlimited sense, there's nothing guiding you saying like, I should go less in this direction and more in this direction. It would be more interesting. It would be more creative going in this direction. So I think that's why you're seeing that bump, and especially some of the older and oldest of the institutions in the faith world starting to receive more people having an interest in it.
Yeah, I suppose to use an analogy, it's, we went off the road and people are starting to get tired of all the bumps and ruts, and they look over and there's a, nice paved area over there. Let's swerve the wheel a little bit and get back on the lane.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right. Well, I mean, that certainly makes a whole lot of sense to me. I know for myself, and I've been very open with the audience about my own personal journey, and I agree. I'll echo with you. I'm not trying to offend the evangelicals. I just know this is what my journey led me to, was to more orthodoxy, more tradition, and I'm very attracted to those types of churches. Even though, I'm not Catholic, I have a lot of respect for the Catholics. Even though I'm not Reformed, I have a lot of respect for the Presbyterian churches. And I will say, the good ones, the ones that haven't gone woke, because I'm not going to encourage anyone to go to some of these woke churches that have all sorts of problems.
Yeah, I think people are searching for that sense. At least I hope they're searching for that sense of tradition, like the things that connect us. Well, this gets back to the eschatology point where we started this conversation, right? So this desire to be connected to things that preceded us and that things that will follow
Eric,
us even when we aren't here.
I hate to do this to you, but we're hitting that hard break. We're going to come back, though, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to finish this conversation because it's a good one. Hey, this is Caleb Collier with Church and State, and I want to tell you about a great product, Liberty Cigars. I know for myself, there's nothing grander than sitting around a campfire, having a great theology discussion with a group of men while smoking a cigar. That's why I love Liberty Cigars. Every cigar has a story to tell. Not only are you going to be smoking the finest cigars on the market, but you're also going to get a history lesson with every single one of them. From George Washington to Thomas Jefferson, the heroes of the American Revolution, generals, presidents throughout history. I'm telling you, I absolutely love Liberty Cigars. I need you to go to libertycigars.com. Use that promo code Church and State. You'll get a discount, and you'll also be helping to support Church and State with everything that we do. And we are back, and thank you for staying with us. You're over at churchandstate.media, and we're going to go right back to our guest. But real quick, I got to plug one of our affiliates, and I am thinking coffee. Chris, I love coffee. Chris loves coffee even more than I do. But this is the the preferred beverage of Americans, right? We don't drink tea here in this country. That's just, we like to throw it in water. And not drink it afterwards. We like coffee, okay? So if you like coffee, go check out Hunter's Blend Coffee. It is absolutely delicious. It's by a Christian and a patriot, so you know you're spending your money in a wise way. But go check this stuff out. They got some great blends. In fact, I got one right here, Liberty Roast. This is a fantastic medium blend, and I typically don't like medium blends. So go check those out. Use the promo code Church and State. Get a good cup of coffee and help support us. And one more time, hit the donate button for us, please. Keep us alive on so many of these different networks and continue to expand and having great conversations like that. So right there, hit the donate button for us. Keep us going. All right, with that, let's go back to our guest, Eric Kohn. And I hate it. I'm watching the clock go by, and I'm like, oh, no, I'm going to have to interrupt him. I hate it. I apologize. But, Eric, please continue with what you were talking about with returning back to eschatology.
Yeah, it's the sense, right, of being, we were talking about tradition, and one of the reasons that people are being attracted to institutions with a longer history in that sense of tradition. To me, it comes back to that, wanting to be connected not only to things that preceded you, but to things that will follow you on this planet as well, to not just see your life as being entirely contained within the parameters of your birth and your death. Now, we get this in some very human ways as well, right? In that you knew your parents, your grandparents, people whose coming into this world preceded yours. And if you have a family, I've got 2 kids, you see your children as something that is, you are tied to something that will continue beyond you, right? Like I always love the line in the Christopher Nolan movie Interstellar that we're here to be memories for our children. I think you have that drive in people to want to be connected not only to things that will come after you, and I think that's probably the one that we need the most of right now. My friend Tim Carney, who I mentioned earlier, talks a lot about the birth dearth problems that we are having that are affecting not the rest of the world more pointedly, but the United States as well. I mean, people don't have kids when they don't feel hopeful about the future. So I think that's the one that I think needs the most attention right now. But also, that sense of what came before us, that sense of tradition, the understanding of like why things are done the way that they are done is, some people would call it democracy for the dead. I think there's that great Chestertonian fence insight in it as well, that it's not to say that everything that's been handed down to us as tradition needs to be maintained forever and ever, amen. It is to say that you do at least need to understand why those things are there before you want to obliterate them. And I think that desire that exists in us to be tethered to something that is bigger than us, that came before us, that will be after us as well, I think should inevitably lead people back to institutions that are connected to the past and that do have a vision towards the future.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that, and I would encourage anyone watching the show to go and examine these institutions. Once again, my journey, I took a year of studying the different denominations and ultimately landed on LCMS specifically. But it was a grand journey for me. I want to turn this conversation back over to politics because we've been talking a little bit about the populist movements. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Donald Trump in this because he really started as a populist movement. But as of late in particular, a lot of people are feeling like they've been betrayed. What are your thoughts on this?
I am less inclined to agree that people have been betrayed in any sense, and that I think my evaluation of Donald Trump was that never that he was a programmatic candidate. I think he was a candidate who was in many ways more detached from ideology than most politicians that came before him. I mean, even ones that you would want to, at least in recent history, the quintessential example of this has always been Bill Clinton, right, who was willing to triangulate against his left flank, against people on his right as well. I definitely think that there was a core belief system there. I think Trump's primary belief system is in himself. And in that sense, I don't think it is possible for him to betray anything, because it's just, it is whatever it is that he wants whenever it is that he wants it. So I would suggest that people who accepted it under the premise that there was like a clear program that was going to be followed here, I think we're just inevitably setting themselves up for disappointment. There was this great anecdote early on in the Trump phenomenon. There was this publication, it does still exist, called American Affairs. And the guy who started it, by the name of Julius Krein, the effort was to put some philosophical and ideological underpinnings to Trumpism. And there were a number of us at the time who looked at that project and said, this is going to end in one of two ways. Either you are going to fashion this ideological framework, and at some point you are going to have to willingly depart from Trump because he is inevitably going to contradict it. Or you just have to agree to follow the man wherever he goes. And Krein, to his credit, I think is even less than a year into the publication, basically says like, yeah, that's the problem. Either we can follow this in an ideological format, or we just have to follow whatever it is that he does. So my suggestion would be that, you know, you can evaluate his individual decisions on the merits of themselves, but if you were looking for consistency or a through line other than, I think, his own concept of his self-interest in all of this, I think you were setting yourself up to be disappointed.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people are experiencing right now. That you saw a lot of people, excuse after excuse, trust the plan. Trump is playing 5D chess or whatever it was, and we kept seeing disappointment, and we really couldn't hold him to that standard that you were talking about. And I think you absolutely nailed it, because Trump believes in Trump, and so he's going to do whatever he wants to do. Who do you believe, when we're looking back throughout American history, and specifically towards the executive office, who was the last classically liberal or true constitutionalist as a president?
The last, I think, would be, I could say positive things about the Reagan presidency. I can say positive things about in some senses, the Eisenhower presidency, and certainly the Calvin Coolidge presidency before we start getting into the 1800s. I really think we focus so much when we get back to the early 1900s, before we really get to World War II and FDR, who is just a much more complicated legacy. We tend to have an over-focusing on Woodrow Wilson and an under-focusing on Calvin Coolidge, who I think arguably, at least from the 20th century forward, Coolidge was, the most classically liberal constitutionalist president that we had. And Woodrow Wilson was quite arguably, and I think is, the least constitutional. I mean, he had the most open disdain for the Constitution, for the American system of any president that we had. And to have them come in such close proximity to each other is almost kind of a fascinating whiplash effect that tells you about what can happen when dear boy events start to intervene there. But particularly since we're in celebrating America's 250th this year, if any of your listeners have never read the speech that Coolidge gave on, what would it have been? It would have been the 150th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. I was not a math major. I was a percussionist, so I only count to 4. But go back and read that speech from Coolidge, and it to me is one of the most important things you'll read about the Declaration of Independence, for the point that it makes of, when you make the statements that are made in that declaration, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that is final. There is no improving on that. There is nothing to evolve from that forward. That is final for all time. And it is a beautiful summation of the importance of the Declaration, particularly, and here's where I, not only as an Illinoisan, but I think as an American, I have to give a hat tip to Abraham Lincoln for what he did in the second founding of the country. That we understand the importance of the Declaration of Independence differently post-Lincoln than Americans did prior to it, in that the conclusion of the Declaration was what was important, that we're declaring independence from England. And the rest was, depending on how you want to look at it, some very beautiful throat clearing or, Thomas Jefferson working on a deadline. Post-Lincoln, we have this refocusing on the beginning of the Declaration as the animating principle for our country, the idea that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, among those life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We refocus the meaning of what it is to be an American on that, which is very much echoed in that beautiful speech from Coolidge, which is absolutely something I'd point people to really appreciate the incredible thing that is the American founding in this 250th anniversary of it.
I mean, amen. Keep it cool with Coolidge. I'm so pleased that you said that. I've told people on the show for a very long time that Calvin Coolidge was truly our last constitutional president. And so I would echo that, read what he said. I mean, he was called Silent Cal, but he had some great writing, some great speeches. And in reference to Wilson, was it Wilson or was it House? I mean, we don't really know who was actually leading the country at that point, but regardless, two awful men. I want to point people to the website as we're kind of winding down here, but I want people to go to your website, and the website is americasfuture.org. Tell us a little bit more about this website, why people should go to it, perhaps support you in all of your work.
We think that there's an important role in a lot of those institutions that we mentioned before in the space of advocating for human freedom, for liberty, for sound economics. And what America's Future does is we work with and train and accelerate the careers of the young people at those institutions, for the future leaders of these organizations that are going to be coming up with the policy proposals, that are going to be coming up with the antidotes to a lot of the problems that we see at the federal level, but also at the state level and at the local level. And we work with those young people to improve their writing, their leadership, their marketing skills, their fundraising skills, as well as and the way that I first got involved with the organization, as I led the chapter in Chicago, Illinois for about 11 years. And, in some of these major cities, where my joke has always been, right, like, somebody who was on the center right in Chicago, you kind of that feeling of like being Christians in ancient Rome. You draw a C in the dirt and you wipe it out, and you're like, we'll meet in the catacombs under the Daly Center. It gives you that sense of community, that there are other people that are there that see the world similarly to you, and that you can build a network with them, and that you can all help and support each other. So that's the work that we do. People can find it at americasfuture.org. If you're interested, if you're a young person and you're interested in those programs, please check them out. We've got applications open for fellowships, our Writing, Lead, Marketing, Create Fellowship, and our Fundraising Fellowship. Applications are open right now. Take a look at those. If you have young people in your life who are interested in these ideas, please point them to them. And if you have the ability, please check out the donate page as well, and consider supporting the work that we're doing.
Sure, absolutely. Tell us about this rooftop happy hour as well. This is an event really right around the corner here, but it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, this is within our programming like that, especially in Washington, D.C., we bounce back and forth between having social events and having policy-focused events, because as the founders of AF said in the late 90s, never underestimate the value of having a good time. And one of the things that we found, particularly in DC, where we're very active, and there's a lot of people who work in this space, who work for think tanks and policy organizations, who are of this mindset, who believe in the American founding and believe in the concept of human freedom and liberty, wanting to build that network with each other. So it's an opportunity for those people to come together, have a drink, have a good time, get to know each other, and then also find out about the policy-focused event, the ideas focused events that we'll have coming up where they can expand their understanding of classically liberal ideas, get more involved with the organization, and move their careers forward.
Excellent. Well, I got to tell you, I've really enjoyed this interview. Very, very insightful. I hope the audience goes to americasfuture.org, americasfuture.org. Go check that out, ladies and gentlemen, and see, maybe, you're a little bit older and you have a child that's starting to get interested in the workforce. I think this would be a great organization to put them in contact with. Eric, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. If you'd hold on one more minute post-production to say our goodbyes, I'd appreciate it. But again, thank you for your work and joining us on Church and State.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Look, there's hope, and I like that. Not that you're a pessimist, not that you're an optimist, but that you're hopeful for the next generation. And if you do have that hope, I think getting them in contact with America's Future is a great idea. Church and State is brought to you in part by Colonial Life Spokane Independent Agents, Finders Insurance, and Mark37.com. I'm Caleb Collier. I was born for a storm.
Welcome to the fire.
This is Caleb Collier with Church and State. Are you tired of your device spying on you? Ladies and gentlemen, we live in 1984. Your phones, your tablets, your smart televisions, they all are spying on you. And this is why I heavily endorse Mark37.com. This is everything you need for your digital privacy. Phones, tablets, laptops, all of them are ghost protocoled. So that means that you are in charge of your own data. Just go to churchandstate.media, scroll over to shop, and hit mark37.com for all of your privacy needs. Make sure to use that promo code Church and State. Hey, this is Caleb Collier with Church and State. I want to tell you about Patriot Pouch. Look, if you're one of these individuals that's interested in nicotine and potentially the health benefits from it, but you're concerned about some of the side effects, Patriot Pouch might be your answer. This is a company that uses nixidine instead of nicotine. It hits the same nicotine receptors in your brain, but without those side effects like elevated heart rate or elevated blood pressure. So if you want the health benefits of nicotine without nicotine, Patriot Pouch may be the company for you. I need you to go to patriotpouchusa.com, use the promo code Church and State. You'll get a great nicotine replacement, and you'll be helping to support Church and State and everything that we do here. And remember, when you go to patriotpouchusa.com, not only are you supporting a Christian patriot business owner, but you're helping to support Church and State.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want all of you to be a walking billboard. Some of us don't have platforms such as Church and State, but you know what? We can wear t-shirts and engage in great conversations with Christians and patriots all across the country. Stand Up Now apparel is the best t-shirts out there. These are American made, owned by a Christian and a patriot, and the material, it's like getting a warm hug from yours truly. One of the better things as well is there's no tags. I hate tags. I know you do as well. I don't know how many times I've cut off a tag and ended up with a hole in my shirt. You never have to worry about that with Stand Up Now apparel. These are the best shirts out there with the greatest messages. Let me give you a few examples. There's a t-shirt out there that says armed with Ephesians 6 on it. I gotta tell you, when I wear this in town, I get a lot of comments and a lot of eyebrow raises. There's other shirts that include pure blood in Hebrew, obviously in reference to the vaccines, and also you can get Church and State merch there as well. We've got our flagship shirt, I Was Born for a Storm, with Church and State right on it. You got to order this shirt. Go to Stand Up Now apparel for t-shirts and hats, all of this great merch with great Christian and patriotic messages. Remember to use that promo code Church and State.